Following my heart surgery, my son-in-law remarked, "That elderly woman just wastes our money. She should already be living in a care facility." My daughter chuckled at this comment. The following day, he found himself unable to use his card. "I am grateful to have you here. Stay with my story until the very end and share in the comments the city you are watching from so I can understand how far my tale has traveled." For 3 days, the steady beeping of the heart monitor had been a constant presence at my side. According to Dr. Matthews, the bypass operation had been successful, but healing would be gradual given my age. When Melissa suggested I stay with them instead of employing a home nurse, I felt deeply moved. My daughter seldom invited me into their spacious suburban home, a house I'd helped them purchase, though that was never mentioned. She had reassured me it would be simpler for everyone, though she avoided meeting my gaze. Charles agreed, saying, "There is a guest room downstairs, so you will not need to worry about stairs." The first night there, I was too worn out and under medication to sense the unease around me. The guest bedroom was immaculate but cold. There was not one family picture or keepsake, only beige walls, beige carpets, and a hospital bed they had rented for my recovery. Despite this, I felt thankful. At 68, my recovery was not as swift as it once had been. Everything shifted on the 3rd day. I had been drifting between sleep and wakefulness, numb from the painkillers. The door to my room stood slightly open, Melissa's idea, so she could hear if I required anything. In reality, she only checked on me twice each day, once in the morning and once in the evening, often while she was busy talking on her phone. That afternoon, I overheard their voices in the hallway. They must have assumed I was asleep. "How long is she going to stay this time?" Charles asked sharply, his tone filled with irritation. "The doctor said at least 3 weeks," Melissa responded, "maybe closer to 4. Charles let out a deep sigh. "That is a full month of babysitting and dealing with someone who cannot do anything on their own. Do you realize how much this is costing us? The special diet, the medicine, the utility bills." I felt a sudden tightness in my chest, but it had nothing to do with my recent operation. "No, I understand." Melanie's voice dropped to a quieter tone. "But what other options do we have? She is my mother." Charles's voice became cold and deliberate. "This elderly woman is just draining our finances. By now, she should be in a care facility. We could sell her house and be done with all this." There was a long pause, one that felt endless. I hoped my daughter would speak up for me, remind him that the house had been partly paid for with my retirement funds, that I had worked 2 jobs for many years to provide Melissa with everything I never had. Instead, I heard her laugh. Not a nervous or dismissive laugh, but a genuine one filled with agreement. "God, you are horrible," she said with affection in her tone. "Still, you are not wrong. The Sunset Valley facility has available spots. Maybe once she recovers, we could suggest it to her. Tell her it is for her own benefit." "The sooner, the better," Charles replied. "Every single day she is here feels like another day we are bleeding money." Their voices became faint as they moved toward the kitchen. I lay still, feeling a new, sharp ache spreading across my chest, a pain that no operation could ever heal. My own daughter, my only child, the girl I raised alone after her father abandoned us when she was barely 3 years old. The child for whom I had sacrificed absolutely everything. 4. That night, sleep evaded me entirely. I stared at the ceiling, hearing the conversation replay in my mind, like a terrifying film I could not switch off. When Melissa brought my nighttime medication, I took it dutifully and forced a smile that felt like splintered glass resting on my lips. "You look pale, Mom," she said, glancing at her watch. "Should I call the doctor?" "No, darling," I answered softly. "Just tired. Healing takes time at my age." She nodded, already heading for the door. "Charles and I have that charity event tomorrow night. Mrs. Peterson will check on you while we are gone. Her number is on the nightstand." After she left, I dragged myself upright with great effort and reached for my purse. My hands shook, not from weakness, but from a cold, fierce anger I had never experienced before. I contacted my bank, then my investment advisor, followed by my lawyer. By the time dawn came, I had made a plan. Not a single word about what I heard would escape my lips. Not one tear would fall in front of them. They wanted my money. They assumed I was just a burden, a cash machine for their extravagant life. It was time they understood who they really dealt with. The drain on me had truly been relentless. The following evening, I observed from my window as Melanie and Charles departed for their gala, adorned in designer outfits purchased with loans of mine that were never repaid. Charles assisted Melissa into their luxurious SUV, another present from me to celebrate their 5th wedding anniversary. They drove off without a backward glance, unaware that everything had already shifted. 2 hours later, my phone rang. It was Melissa, her voice sharp with panic. "Mum, something is wrong with our accounts. Charles's card was declined at the gala dinner. It was so humiliating. And when he checked our accounts, everything was frozen. Even my credit cards are useless." I took a deep, steady breath. "How odd," I said with calm voice. "You should contact the bank in the morning." But we both realized what had occurred. I was reclaiming control over my life, one frozen account at a time. This long-suffering elder had finally bared her teeth. That night, after locking their accounts, I could not find sleep. My heart, recently mended through surgery, felt heavy with a blend of revenge and sorrow. As I lay in that impersonal guest room, memories surged over me like relentless waves, each carrying the burden of decades filled with sacrifice. It was 1983 when Robert left us. Melissa was only 3 years old then, a tiny bundle with pigtails and a smile that could soften even the hardest stone. I was 31, suddenly alone with a mortgage, a toddler, and a part-time bookkeeping job that barely covered groceries. I could not. Robert had told Harriet that he could no longer keep up this family act while Melissa was sleeping in the next room. "I am suffocating here," he said as he packed his bag. I pleaded with him to stay, not because love still lingered, that had disappeared many years before, but for the sake of our daughter. Despite this, he left and moved to California with his secretary, who was 24 years old. For 6 months, child support payments arrived irregularly and then stopped completely. The first year alone was incredibly tough. I picked up a second job working as a waitress at night. Then after putting Melissa to bed and leaving her with my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Gladwell, I took on weekend shifts at the department store. Between these 3 jobs, I barely slept enough to get through the day. Yet Melissa never lacked anything. She had new shoes whenever she needed them, pretty dresses for school photos and dance classes because she loved spinning around. I still vividly recall her 5th birthday celebration. I had worked doubled shifts for weeks to afford the Barbie dream house she wished for. When she unwrapped that gift, her eyes sparkled with amazement. "How did you know, Mummy?" she whispered reverently as her little hands caressed the plastic mansion. "Mummies always know," I told her, masking my fatigue with a smile. I never shared how I had skipped meals that entire month just to save enough money. She was far too young to bear grown-up worries. As Melissa grew older, her needs and desires expanded as well. When she was in middle school, it was expensive branded clothing to avoid being teased. By high school, it became SAT prep courses and dreams of college. Application charges. I took out a second home loan on our humble house to make sure she could enroll at Westlake University when she was admitted. The joy I experienced at her graduation made every sacrifice worthwhile. Every night of lost sleep, every premature grey hair. "You did it, baby," I whispered, embracing her in her cap and gown. "We did it, Mom," she replied, and my heart lifted. That was the last time I recalled her recognizing my sacrifices. After finishing college, Melissa secured a position at a marketing agency. The salary was not large, but enough for her to afford her own place. Still, whenever she required something, such as a security deposit, a new professional outfit, or a dependable car, she turned to me. And I always provided, even if it meant using my retirement funds. It will only be until I become independent, she promised. I'll reimburse you, Mom, I swear. Yet, she never managed to do so. Then Charles appeared. Handsome and driven Charles with a business degree and aspirations to launch his own investment firm. Melissa was captivated from their very first date. Within half a year, they were engaged. I had my doubts. There was something calculating in his gaze when he looked at my daughter, something chilly when his eyes met mine. But I kept my thoughts to myself. Melissa was happy, and that was all that counted. Their wedding was extravagant, far beyond what their combined incomes could support. When Melissa tearfully admitted they lacked $10,000 for their ideal venue, I wrote the check without a second thought. You deserve the perfect day, I told her, even though it meant delaying my retirement by another year. 1 year after the wedding, they discovered the house, a spacious 4-bedroom colonial in an upscale neighborhood. The initial payment was high, nearly 20% of the listed price. Mom, we really love this house, Melissa said over dinner one evening, Charles nodding beside her. But the bank requires such a large down payment. We have been saving for it. How much do you need now? I asked, already prepared to provide whatever amount was necessary. The number they gave was almost half of my remaining retirement savings. Yet the hope in Melanie's eyes, the future I pictured for her, perhaps with grandchildren playing in that big backyard, made the choice simple. I will transfer the money tomorrow, I said. Charles reached over and squeezed my hand. You're incredible, Harriet. We will repay you with interest. That was 7 years ago. Not a single dollar has been returned. Instead, more requests followed for landscaping the new property, for furniture suitable for such a home, even for a boat because Charles needs to entertain clients. Every time I gave, every time they promised to repay, every time they failed to do so. When my own house required a new roof 3 years ago, I couldn't afford it. I sold the place below market value and moved into a tiny apartment. Melanie and Charles suggested I invest the leftover money from the sale with Charles's firm. I'll grow it for you, Harriet, he assured me. You will have more than enough for a comfortable retirement. I placed my trust in him. I believed them. I gave up almost everything I owned. And now here I found myself recovering from heart surgery in their guest room, overhearing their scheme to send me to a nursing home after draining me financially for decades. The following morning, once their cards were declined, they returned early from the gala. I overheard their heated exchange in the kitchen, their voices rising despite efforts to keep quiet. What do you mean all the accounts are frozen? Melissa hissed. Exactly what I said, Charles snapped back. Everything with your mother's name on it is frozen. And since most of our working capital comes from there, did you call the bank? Of course I called the bank. They said it was done upon the account holder's request. Your mother's request. A long silence followed. She knows, Melanie finally murmured, barely audible. I closed my eyes, bracing myself for the confrontation I knew was inevitable. For the first time in decades, I was not going to prioritize Melissa's feelings over my own. The daughter I raised would have to confront the mother she had betrayed. The bedroom door opened without a knock. Melissa stood there, her gala dress disheveled, her mascara streaked from what I assumed were angry tears. Behind her, Charles appeared, his face a mask of restrained rage. Mom, Melissa said with a trembling voice, we need to talk. We need to talk, Melanie repeated, stepping into the room. Charles lingered behind her like a shadow. I straightened up in the hospital bed, ignoring the sharp pain in my chest. Yes, I believe we do. Why did you freeze our accounts? She demanded. Any hint of concern for my well-being completely vanished. I looked at my daughter, really took her in. The expensive dress draped over her slender figure had cost more than 3 months of my Social Security income. The diamond earrings gleamed in the light, a luxury I had helped finance. Everything about her radiated a wealth she had not earned. They are not our accounts, Melissa. They are my accounts. My voice remained calm, steadier than I had anticipated. I have simply taken control of my own money. Charles moved forward, his practiced charm taking over. Harriet, there must be some misunderstanding. We have been managing your investments, helping your retirement grow. Stop, I interrupted, holding up my hand. I heard you both 3 days ago, right outside this door. I heard every word. Colour drained from Melanie's face as Charles's smile faltered and then vanished completely. You were discussing putting me in a nursing home, I continued, about selling my house, which, by the way, I already had to sell because I gave you so much money I could not even afford a new roof. You said I was draining your money when in reality, it has been the opposite for years. Mom, you misunderstood, Melanie began, but I cut her off with a look that silenced her instantly. I understand perfectly now. I did not before, but I do now. I reached for the glass of water on the nightstand, taking a small sip to soothe my dry throat. For 30 years, I have put you first, Melissa. I worked 3 jobs when your father left us. I skipped meals so you could have new clothes. I postponed my retirement to cover your wedding expenses. I even provided the down payment for this house. And we appreciate everything. Truly, Melanie said, desperation creeping into her voice. Appreciative people do not plan to send their mothers to nursing homes while she's recovering from heart surgery, I responded. Appreciative people do not call their mother-in-law a financial burden when she has funded their entire lifestyle. Charles's mask slipped. Just wait a minute now, he said. No, you wait, I answered, surprising myself with how firm I sounded. For years, I have waited. Waited for the loans to be repaid. Waited for some recognition of my sacrifices. Waited to be treated with simple respect in this family. I am done waiting. Melissa sank into the chair beside my bed. Her expression was a mix of anger and fear. So, what happens now? You are just cutting us off completely. I am protecting what remains of my future, I corrected her. Something I should have done long ago. But we have bills to pay, Mom. Mortgage payments, car payments, get real jobs, I said plainly. Real ones, not the part-time consultancy jobs you both dabble in while spending my money. Charles's face turned red. This is absurd, he exclaimed. I own a legitimate investment company, a business that has not generated profit in the past 5 years, I responded firmly. During a restless night, I did more than just freeze accounts. I carefully examined statements, tax records, everything available online. The evidence was damning. This company had been sustained solely by continuous injections of my retirement funds. How dare you? Charles exclaimed as he stepped toward me. I warned him to be cautious with his next move, my finger lingering near the nurse call button. Remember, I am still healing from major surgery. He halted, clenching his fists tightly at his sides. I want both of you to leave now, I insisted. I need to rest. This is our home, Melissa argued. A home mostly purchased with my money, I reminded her. But do not worry. I will not be a burden on your generosity much longer. I have made other arrangements. What kind of arrangements? Melissa questioned, suspicion clouding her face. I smiled faintly. You will know very soon. After their departure and the door slammed behind them, I exhaled a long, unsteady breath. The confrontation had drained more strength from me than I cared to admit. My heart pounded painfully, so I took one of the prescribed nitroglycerin pills to relieve the pressure in my chest. The truth was that my arrangements were real, though not yet fully settled. The day after overhearing their discussion while they were both out, I contacted my longtime friend Martha. I had lost my spouse around the same period as Melissa. We had both been left alone and supported one another through those challenging early years as single parents. Unlike me, Martha had remarried successfully and now enjoyed life in a roomy condo within a retirement neighborhood just beyond the city limits. Of course, you can stay with me while you sort things out, she said, without any hesitation. The guest room is already prepared. I had also gotten in touch with Gerald Hoffman, a lawyer I had consulted years ago when I was contemplating bankruptcy after Charles had left. At that time, I did not need his services, having found a way to cope on my own. Still, I never forgot his kindness during our meeting. "Mrs. Peterson, I remember you," he said warmly. "What can I do for you now?" I shared my situation, the many years I had offered financial help, the broken promises to repay me, the conversation I had overheard, and my choice to freeze the accounts. "You made the right decision," he assured me, "but we have to ensure they cannot access your money through other channels. When can you visit my office?" I arranged an appointment for the following week once I was permitted to travel short distances. Until that moment, I had to stay in the house under the same roof as the daughter who betrayed me and the son-in-law who regarded me as nothing but a resource to exploit and discard. That night, I overheard them arguing in their bedroom upstairs. Their voices fluctuated like waves, occasionally clear enough to be understood. For me to grasp, pieces. Your fault for not being more cautious. Always said we were spending excessively, unable to cover the boat payment without. And the credit cards? I felt no pleasure in their hardship, only a deep sorrow. When did my bright, affectionate daughter become this stranger who placed money and status above her own mother? Was it my fault for giving her too much, for failing to teach her the worth of what she had? Or was it simply the corrupting effect of Charles and his fixation on appearances? It no longer mattered. The harm had been done on all fronts. All I could do was safeguard what remained of my future and hope that one day perhaps Melissa would grasp the lessons she was facing. I reached for my phone and messaged Martha. "Can I come 3 days from now instead of next week?" Her answer came nearly instantly. "Absolutely. I will prepare the room tomorrow. Stay strong, friend." For the first time since my operation, I experienced something close to calm. I had a strategy, I had support, and most importantly, I had reclaimed control of my life from those who had exploited my trust for far too long. The following morning would bring further confrontations, more blame, more attempts to pressure me back into obedience. But I was prepared for them now. The era of Harriet Peterson being a silent ATM was finished. Morning came with an unusual quietness throughout the house. No coffee brewing, no shower running, no... Closet doors were sliding back and forth upstairs. I glanced at my watch. It was 9:30 in the morning. Normally, Melissa would be at her part-time marketing consultancy, and Charles would be in his office making calls to potential investors while relying on my financial support. Carefully, I swung my legs over the bed's edge, testing my strength. The incision on my chest tugged slightly, but the discomfort was bearable. Following my doctor's advice, I had been taking brief walks around the room each day to slowly build up my endurance. Today, I needed to push myself farther. Using the walker provided by the hospital, I moved slowly toward the door and opened it. The hallway was empty. I shuffled my way toward the kitchen, each step intentional and cautious. There, I found them both at the kitchen table, still dressed in pajamas. Their laptops were open, their faces marked by fatigue and stress. The table was cluttered with empty coffee cups and scattered papers. They looked up as I entered, surprise and exhaustion mixing in their expressions. "Mum," Melissa said, quickly shutting her laptop, "you should be resting." "I have to keep moving," I answered. "Doctor's orders." Charles made no effort to be polite. "We need to discuss the accounts, Harriet," he said. I nodded, lowering myself slowly into an empty chair. "Yes, that is necessary." His voice was tight with restrained anger as he continued. "This situation is completely unacceptable. We have responsibilities and payments to make. Do you realize what you have done to our credit rating? I expect the same reaction." "You intended to put me in a nursing home and sell my house," I said calmly. Melanie at least had the decency to seem embarrassed. "Mom, that was only something said in the heat of the moment. We were under a lot of financial pressure. People often say things they do not mean when they are stressed." "Exactly. Which part did you not mean, Melissa? That I am draining your finances?" that I belong in a nursing home? Or was it the chuckle you had when your husband suggested getting rid of me? She recoiled as if I had hit her. That is not fair. No. What is unfair is exploiting your mother for years and then discarding her once she is no longer beneficial. I stared straight at Charles. The marina called your cell phone earlier. Since you were both asleep, I answered it. They wanted to know when you would be settling the payment for the boat slip. Apparently, it is overdue by 2 months. Charles's face reddened with fury. You had no right to answer my phone, and you had no right to spend my retirement funds on a boat you cannot afford, I responded. The call went to the landline. By the way, your cell phone is probably no longer active. He rose suddenly, pacing the kitchen like a trapped beast. This is madness. You cannot just cut us off without any warning. Can I? You were planning to place me in a nursing home without any notice. At least I'm offering you the courtesy of a discussion. Melissa reached across the table, her hand stopping just short of touching mine. Mom, please, we can find a solution together. We are family. Family, I repeated the word, feeling its bitterness on my tongue. Family does not take advantage of one another, Melissa. Family does not just keep taking without ever giving anything in return. We have given back, she argued. We have been caring for you after your surgery, have we not? I laughed, a brief sharp sound that pierced my chest. For 3 entire days in a house I helped to pay for, while secretly planning to move me into a nursing home. Should I really feel grateful? Charles interrupted, suddenly switching to his business tone. Harriet, let's be realistic. You need someone to manage your finances. You are not getting any younger, and the costs of healthcare continue to climb. We can establish a formal agreement. Stop, I said, raising my hand. I have already arranged for a financial advisor recommended by my lawyer. My finances will be well taken care of, thank you very much. Melanie's voice rose in panic. You've consulted a lawyer? I have, Gerald Hoffman. Maybe you remember him. He helped me go over the documents when I gave you the down payment for this house. The very down payment you promised to repay within 5 years. Charles's facade slipped once more. Is this your way of repaying our generosity? Bringing in lawyers? Generosity? I could barely keep the disbelief from my voice. You have lived off my money for years. The cars, the vacations, this house, all supported by me. And now that I actually need help, now that I am recovering from major surgery, you speak of placing me in a care facility. I forced myself to stand. Leaning heavily on the walker, I prepared to leave in 2 days. Martha Sullivan had kindly offered me her guest room until I could secure a place of my own. Mom, please don't do this, Melissa pleaded, tears welling up in her eyes. We can find a solution, I responded firmly. There is no solution to find. The accounts will stay frozen until my lawyer and financial advisor have reviewed everything thoroughly. After that, what rightfully belongs to me will remain mine. Whatever is legitimately yours, if any, will be returned to you. Charles slammed his fist on the table, causing the coffee mugs to rattle. This is blackmail, he accused. No, Charles, this is facing the consequences, I said. I turned to leave, legs trembling from standing too long. Behind me came Melissa's sobbing and Charles's furious muttering. I did not look back. When I reached my room, exhaustion fully caught up with me. I slid onto the bed, heart pounding uneasily. Taking my medication, I closed my eyes and tried to calm my breathing. The confrontation had unfolded just as I had anticipated. Charles's rage and Melanie's manipulation were their usual tactics. Those methods had always worked on me before. The thought of Melissa being upset or disappointed used to make me give in repeatedly, but not this time. My phone vibrated with a message from Martha. A lawyer friend of mine specializes in elder financial abuse. Want his contact? I quickly replied, yes, please. The rest of the day dragged on in uncomfortable silence. Neither Melissa nor Charles came to see how I was doing. My dinner, a frozen meal heated in the microwave, was placed outside my door without any explanation. I managed to eat half of it, feeling too sick with anxiety to finish the rest. That evening, the doorbell rang. Curious, I moved toward the door and opened it just a crack, listening closely. "I'm sorry, sir, but the payment did not go through," a male voice said. "I cannot deliver the furniture without confirmation of payment." "There must be some mistake." Charles's voice sounded strained. "Try again." "I have run it 3 times, sir. It keeps being declined." "Fine, just take it back. We will figure this out and reschedule." After the front door shut, Charles's heavy footsteps climbed the stairs, followed by the loud bang of a bedroom door. Later, I overheard Melissa talking on the phone. Her voice was low but desperate. "Dad, I know it has been a while, but we are in a really tight situation. Mum has frozen all the accounts. No, she found out about it. Yes, I know that was wrong. But Dad, please, we cannot pay the mortgage this month." Then came the sound of sobbing, soft yet unmistakable. A brief wave of sympathy washed over me. Robert had never truly supported Melissa when she needed him, and nothing seemed to have changed. However, my empathy was quickly overshadowed by the reality of what she and Charles had done and intended to do. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Gerald, my attorney. "Appointment confirmed for 11 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. I will pick you up at 10:30. Do not sign anything before we meet," he advised. I replied with a simple thank you and leaned back, feeling a mix of emotions. Pillows. Tomorrow promised to be another challenging day. Yet for the first time in many years, I was standing up for myself instead of constantly sacrificing for others. It did not feel comfortable. Not yet, but it was essential. The old Harriet would have given up by now, overwhelmed by her daughter's tears. The new Harriet, the one who emerged after betrayal, understood differently. Sometimes love requires standing strong, even when it causes pain. Sometimes the kindest act is allowing someone to face the results of their own choices. As I slowly drifted to sleep, I felt a strange sense of calm. No matter what tomorrow held, I would confront it on my own terms. Gerald Hoffman arrived exactly on time. At 10:30 the following morning, I was ready and dressed, seated in the guest room with a small suitcase at my side. My heart medication was carefully arranged in a pill organizer, and important papers were safely tucked in a folder, the few I had managed to keep rather than leave under Melissa and Charles's control. I heard the doorbell followed by quiet voices in the hallway. Moments later, Melanie appeared at my door, her face tight with tension. "There is a lawyer here to see you," she said flatly. "You are really going through with this?" "Yes, I am," I answered, holding her gaze firmly. She shook her head, a bitter smile playing on her lips. "I barely recognize you anymore." "Funny you say that," I replied while reaching for my walker. "I was thinking the same thing about you." Gerald then helped me up. The sedan carried me with a soft respect that felt almost unfamiliar after enduring days of Charles and Melissa's cold behavior. He was now in his 70s, his hair completely white, yet his eyes remained as sharp and compassionate as I recalled. "You are making the right decision, Harriet," he reassured me as we drove away from the house. I did not glance back to see if Melissa was observing. At his office, I was taken aback to discover not only Martha waiting for me, but also a financial advisor named Ms. Patel and another lawyer specializing in cases of elder financial exploitation. Gerald explained that it was best for everyone to be present simultaneously. There was quite a lot to address. For the following 3 hours, we meticulously examined statements, transfers, loans, and investments. The reality that unfolded was far worse than I had anticipated. Over the past 7 years, I had lent Melissa and Charles more than $450,000, money I was never going to recover. They had also engaged in risky investments with the funds I had trusted them with, losing nearly $200,000 more. This is a classic example of financial exploitation, the elder abuse attorney, Mr. Delaney, stated solemnly. "We have a solid case for legal action if you wish to proceed." I hesitated. The idea of taking my own daughter to court made my stomach twist. What would that process involve? Mr. Delaney explained, a civil lawsuit to recover the money and possibly criminal charges for Charles because he acted as your financial advisor without appropriate licensing. The matter would be public. It could get complicated, yet it might be the only chance to regain part of what has been lost. I glanced at Martha, who gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. You do not have to choose immediately, she said. Let us first get you comfortable at my place. Ms. Patel, the financial advisor, cleared her throat. The positive news, Harriet, is that your Social Security remains intact, and there is roughly $120,000 left in accounts they could not reach. Although it is not the retirement you had envisioned, with careful planning, you will not be left without means. I nodded, feeling both relief and sorrow flood through me. Not left without means, yet far from the secure retirement I had spent decades striving to achieve. Gerald gave me a ride to Martha's condo afterward. As we arrived, my phone started ringing. Melissa's name appeared on the screen. You should answer, Gerald suggested. But remember, do not agree to anything before talking to us, I said, activating the speaker so Gerald could listen in. Hello, Melissa. Mum, you must come home immediately. Her voice shook. This situation has gone too far. I'm not returning, Melissa. I have made other plans. You cannot just abandon your family, she said, her voice edging toward hysteria. Family? I could not hide the bitterness in my voice. Is that how you define people who intend to place you in a nursing home when you become inconvenient? That was only talk. We were under financial stress. You understand how it is. Charles changes when he is under pressure. Yes, I understand. I see how you enable him, justify his actions, and then turn to me to clean up the chaos. Not anymore. There was a pause. Then a different voice took the call. Harriet, this is absurd. Charles's tone softened into the smooth pitch he used when convincing hesitant investors. We can settle this like grown-ups. Come back and we will agree on a fair compromise. There is nothing to negotiate, Charles. My attorneys and financial consultant have reviewed everything. They fully understand what you have done. Attorneys? His voice grew sharper. You are threatening legal action against your own family. Do you realize how that will appear? Are you seriously concerned about appearances now? I asked, astonished. Think about Melissa, he insisted. Consider how this will damage her career if it becomes known that her mother is suing her. I closed my eyes, the familiar heaviness of a mother's guilt pressing down on me. Even now, he was trying to turn my love for Melissa into a weapon against me. Mom, please. Melanie was back on the line, sobbing openly. We are sorry now. We will make it right. Just come home. For a moment, I hesitated. The urge to comfort my child, to fix everything for her, was nearly irresistible. But then I recalled the bitter laughter she shared with Charles, the cold cruelty of their conversation just outside my door. I am not coming home, I said firmly. The accounts will stay where they are. The situation is on hold until my legal team has finished their review. If they advise pursuing legal measures, I will proceed. You can't be serious, Charles exclaimed. Absolutely serious. And Charles, if you ever mention placing me in a nursing facility again, make sure I am far from hearing it. I ended the conversation, exhaling with a tremor. Well done, Gerald said softly. That must have been difficult. It was. Nothing about this was simple. But when Martha welcomed me at her door with a warm embrace and promised genuine homemade soup for dinner, I realized I had made the right decision. That evening, Martha and I sat on her balcony, watching the sunset when my phone buzzed with messages from Melissa. The buying bank called, expressing they could not cover the mortgage payment and pleading, "Please, Mom." Then Melissa wrote about Charles discussing bankruptcy. "Is that what you want for us?" she asked. Lastly, "Dad won't assist. You are our only hope. If you ever loved me, you will help now." Martha glanced over my shoulder and shook her head. "She is still trying to manipulate you. She learned from the best. I said with sorrow, recalling all the ways Charles had manipulated both of us throughout the years. I just never recognized it until this moment. "What will you do?" Martha inquired. I put the phone down without replying. I intend to let them sort their own problems out, just as I had to when their father abandoned us. Perhaps it is the only way Melissa will truly mature. That night, I slept more peacefully than I had in a long time since my surgery. Difficult choices lay ahead, complicated legal issues to handle, and the pain of a fractured relationship with my daughter that might never mend. Yet for now, I was safe. I was surrounded by friends. Above all, I was finally putting myself first after a lifetime of prioritizing everyone else over me. As I slipped into sleep, I reflected on the young mother I had been, juggling 3 jobs and missing meals to provide Melissa with everything. That woman would be horrified by what was happening now, but she could never have foreseen years of exploitation or the casual harshness of being called a burden by the child she'd given everything for. Sometimes love requires setting limits. Sometimes it means letting go. Sometimes it means allowing those you love to face the results of their own decisions, no matter how painful it is to watch. 6 months can transform everything. The season shifted from winter to spring. As life outside Martha's condo blossomed anew, I felt my own renewal. My recovery from heart surgery steadily improved. The scar on my chest softened from a vivid crimson to a faint line, a lasting token of physical and emotional restoration. Weekly cardiac rehab sessions rebuilt my strength, while regular meetings with my financial and legal advisors fortified my determination. Ultimately, I did not pursue legal action against Melanie and Charles. Mr. Delaney had prepared a compelling case concerning financial matters. There was a chance for exploitation, yet when it was time to finalize the paperwork, I found myself unable to proceed. Not because I had forgiven them, I was far from that, but because exposing this matter publicly would only deepen the pain and bitterness. Instead, we issued a formal demand through my lawyers, detailing the funds that had been misused and setting conditions for repayment. Their reply arrived via their hastily appointed attorney. They lacked the means to repay. Charles's investment company had collapsed without my money to support it. They had missed 2 mortgage installments and were on the verge of foreclosure. The luxury vehicles had been repossessed. Their lawyer described their situation as severe financial distress using very cautious language. Martha said when I showed her the letter, "They made their bed, now they must lie in it." She was undeniably right, but I could not ignore the faint pulse of maternal concern. What would they do if the house was lost? How would they survive? "Stop," Martha said firmly when I expressed these worries. "You have spent your entire life worrying about Melissa. Now it is her turn to manage without you as a fallback." With Martha's support, I turned my energy toward rebuilding my own life. Miss Patel, my financial advisor, helped me develop a practical plan based on the savings and social security I had left. It was not the retirement I had envisioned, but it was manageable. "You're actually better off than many people your age," she reassured me. During one of our meetings, I heard, "The accounts you personally managed were kept in good order. It is only the ones you entrusted to Melissa and Charles that suffered devastating losses." I could not help but notice the irony. My daughter, who had accused me of being financially careless, ended up causing my financial downfall. By April, I was determined to find a place of my own. Martha had been an incredible help, but I needed to regain my independence. I located a modest 1-bedroom apartment in a senior living facility. It lacked the luxury of marble countertops and designer touches found in Melissa and Charles's home, but offered cleanliness, safety, and affordability. Most importantly, this space belonged to me. On the day I moved, Martha and I unpacked my few possessions when my phone rang, displaying Melissa's number. I had not heard from her for weeks, since our lawyer's letter was acknowledged. I hesitated but answered, "Hello, Mom." Her voice was different, softer, and without the usual tone of entitlement that I was used to. "How are you?" she asked. "I'm doing well," I replied carefully. "Today I'm settling into my new apartment." "New apartment? You moved?" she questioned. "Yes, it is a senior community on Westlake Avenue. Nothing fancy, but it suits me." Silence stretched for a long moment. Finally, she said, "I'm glad you found a place." I replied, "Mum, I have something to tell you." I braced myself, expecting a request for money or assistance. She said, "I am listening. Charles left." The words spilled out quickly as I began explaining what happened after our cars were repossessed and When the foreclosure notice arrived, he simply packed a bag and walked away. He said he could not endure the decline in lifestyle any longer. He has filed for divorce. I sank onto my new couch, taking in the news. Part of me wanted to say, "I warned you," but the hurt in Melissa's voice stopped me. I said instead, "I'm sorry," and meant it deeply. No matter what she had done, I never wished for her to suffer the same kind of abandonment I endured when her father left. "Do not blame yourself," she replied with a bitter laugh. "You were right about Charles all along. We're not you. You just never voiced it." "It was not my place," I answered. "You were grown. You made your decision." Another stretch of silence passed between us. "For now, I'm staying with Julie from work," she finally said, naming a colleague I had met a few times. "The bank will finalize the foreclosure next month." Then, she confessed quietly, "I do not know what will happen after. I am searching for a full-time job. My part-time marketing position is insufficient to afford an apartment here." I closed my eyes, feeling that familiar pull of a mother's instinct to help, to fix everything. But Martha's words echoed inside me. This is her time to figure things out. I said instead, "You will find your way. You are resourceful. You have always been." "Not like you," she said softly. "I never had to be. You always made things so easy for me." It was the closest thing to a truth between us. Acknowledgement of my sacrifices was something I had never heard from her before. It was not exactly an apology, but at least a form of recognition. "Maybe too easy," I suggested softly. "Yeah, perhaps," she replied. We continued talking for a while longer, an awkward yet polite exchange. She did not ask for money, did not mention moving in with me, or make any demands whatsoever. When we ended the call, I felt something I had not anticipated, a faint spark of hope. 3 weeks later, she reached out again. She had secured a position as a marketing coordinator at a local hospital, a considerable downgrade from her former consulting job, but stable work with benefits. She had also found a small studio apartment within her budget, although it was modest and situated in a less attractive area than what she was used to. "Would you like to come see it when I move in next weekend?" she asked cautiously. I accepted the invitation. The following Saturday, Martha drove me to the place Melissa had mentioned. Indeed, it was humble, a converted garage behind an older house with barely enough room for a bed, a tiny kitchenette, and a small bathroom. It was nothing like the large, stylish home she had shared with Charles. What surprised me most was Melissa herself. The designer clothes and flawless manicure were gone. Her hair was tied back in a plain ponytail, dressed simply in jeans and a t-shirt, as she unpacked the few belongings she still had. "It is not much," she said, anxiously watching my reaction, "but it is a beginning." "That means something," I responded. We shared coffee at her little table sat quietly between us. The conversation remained cautious yet somehow warmer than before. As I got ready to leave, she reached inside a box and took out a small, worn stuffed rabbit. "Do you remember this?" she asked, holding it up. I smiled, feeling a rush of memories. "Mr. Floppy. You never went anywhere without him when you were a child. I found him while I was packing," she explained, turning the ragged toy over in her hands. "It made me reflect on everything you did for me back then. How you toiled tirelessly to ensure I had what I needed, even something as trivial as this silly rabbit, when money was tight and you could hardly afford groceries. Her eyes locked with mine, filled with a new understanding. I had never truly grasped how much you gave up. I simply took and took, even as an adult. And then, with Charles, I changed into someone unrecognizable. This was not a complete apology, but it marked a start, an acknowledgement of long-ignored truths. On the drive home with Martha, a lightness settled inside me. The pain and anger had not vanished entirely. Those traumas ran too deep for instant recovery. Yet something had shifted. A door, long sealed, had cracked open slightly. "Do you think you will ever trust her again?" Martha asked as we arrived at the parking area of my new home. I pondered her question carefully. "Trust must be earned," I finally said. "She's taking the first steps. We'll see what happens." Later, while sitting on my modest balcony watching the sunset, I reflected on everything. Reflecting on the last 6 months reveals a journey marked by heartbreak and unexpected challenges. From the crushing betrayal I accidentally overheard, to the tough confrontations and this delicate new start, nothing had unfolded as I had anticipated in my later years. The peaceful retirement I had dreamed of, the close bond with my daughter, and the stability I had sacrificed greatly to secure all came crashing down. Yet here I remain, standing tall, still mending, and slowly discovering my path ahead. My phone buzzed with a message from Melissa. It said, "Thank you for coming today. It truly meant a lot. How about dinner next week? My treat with my first paycheck." I smiled and replied, "I would like that." It was not about forgiveness, not yet, nor was it about restoring the past relationship or the one I had always wished for. Instead, it represented something genuine, something sincere. After years of giving so much and recent months of pain, that honesty felt like the most valuable treasure. Now, I am eager to hear from you who hear my story. What would you do if you were in my position? Have you experienced anything similar in your life? Please share your thoughts below. Meanwhile, I will leave you on the final screen with 2 other stories that are popular on this channel, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until the end.